TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Palestinian Islamists resume rocket fire toward Israel's south, drawing an Israeli retaliation. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, ahead of the imminent presidential inauguration ceremony in Washington, D.C., welcomed the end of the Trump administration. Incoming U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stresses that if Iran would resume compliance to the nuclear agreement of 2015, so would the United States under a Biden administration. Palestinian Islamists launched a rocket toward Israel's south last night, a second such attack within less than 48 hours. While the projectile was fired indiscriminately in the direction of civilian communities, thankfully it exploded in an uninhabited area, causing no injuries or damage. Consequently, the IDF spokesperson's unit informed TV7 that tanks struck military posts belonging to the Hamas terror organization in the southern Gaza Strip. No additional details were provided. Nevertheless, while damage was caused to the Hamas observation posts, the Islamist group did not report any casualties among its operatives. Turning to Iraq, where rumors of an American airstrike against Iranian-linked targets have been proven false. While extensive reports circulated on the matter, Iraqi sources informed TV7 that the bombing was in fact an attack by Islamic State militants on a power transmission tower located in the town of Julf el-Sahar, south of the capital Baghdad, where Iranian proxy militias are apparently stationed. The false media reports were evidently triggered without being corroborated at a time of heightened tensions between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. The U.S. Central Command, which is tasked with military operations in the Middle East, Egypt, and parts of South and Central Asia, announced that B-52 bombers conducted a routine presence patrol in a move aimed to deter the Islamic Republic of Iran. In contrast, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps launched a number of military exercises, the latest of which started yesterday in the country's southern waters and the Makran shores of the Sea of Oman. It followed a large-scale exercise involving new Iranian-made ballistic missiles and suicide drones, alongside an Iranian naval exercise in the Indian Ocean and Gulf of Oman, during which the RGC also held a naval parade in the Persian Gulf, in which around 700 vessels were exhibited. Turning to the Syrian-Iraqi border, where the Iraqi military announced a wide-scale operation to tighten security for the purpose of curbing the cross-border movement of terror groups, drug smuggling, and other illegal activities. The border, which stretches along 600 kilometers, equal to about 400 miles, is currently controlled by various opposing forces, including the Iraqi military, Iranian proxy militias, the Syrian army, jihadist organizations, and US-backed Kurdish militants. Nevertheless, Iraqi commanders are resolved to secure the remote desert frontier.
هنالك عمل هندسي يجري من أعمال الحفر والتحكيم، هنالك نصب للأسلاك الشائكة، المصدات، هنالك أبراج، مستمرين في تجهيز الوحدات بالكاميرات الحرارية وكاميرات المراقبة.
وأيضا ضربنا ضربات قوية لمكافحة المخدرات، مسك مجاميع، والآن الحمد لله والشكر احنا ماشيين باتجاه دعم الشرطة الاتحادية وقاطعها لنجاحها وبناء هذه المنظومة ونكملها إن شاء الله إلى فيش خاوة.
It is important to mention that some sections of the border west of the Syrian town of Deir ez-Zor, which have been subject to repeated aerial strikes against Iranian targets by unidentified aircraft alleged to be Israeli, have been thus far left unattended by the Iraqi armed forces. Turning to the Iranian capital Tehran, where President Hassan Rouhani, ahead of the imminent inauguration ceremony in Washington, D.C., welcomed the end of the Trump administration during a televised cabinet meeting this morning.
امروز روز پایان حکومت نحسش هست و پایان یافت کسی که در تمام 4 سال جز ظلم و فساد و ایجاد مشکلات برای مردم خودش و مردم جهان ثمر دیگری نداشت.
Well, the Islamic Republic is in complete breach of the JCPOA, which is the technical term for the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran. President Rouhani claimed the agreement was still alive and urged the incoming Biden administration to re-enter the deal.
توپ امروز در زمین آمریکا و واشنگتن هست. اگر برگردند عمل کنند به تعهدات، ما هم به تعهدات خودمون عمل میکنیم. ترامپ مرد، زندگی سیاسیش تمام شد و برجام زنده موند. این تمام تلاشش این بود که برجام رو از بین ببره و ناموفق بود، نتونست.
Rouhani further claimed that if the world powers which were party to the deal would fulfill their obligations, the Islamic Republic will also resume its own compliance.
حالا دیگه این وابستگی داره به 5+1. اونا اگه به تعهداتشون عمل کردن بدونن ما هم به تعهداتمون عمل میکنیم.
The comments by the Iranian president have apparently convinced EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell, who implored the Americans to re-enter the deal.
There is a deal, and the deal had a nuclear side and an economic side. The Iranians are ready to go back to the fulfillment of their commitments. If we, the other part of the deal, the Western world, fulfills also our commitments. And for that we need the Americans to go back to the agreement.
Borrell went on to highlight the importance of tackling global challenges amid dangerous times.
We have to understand that this world is much more dangerous, and this requires more unity from our side, and be ready to act when we can, when it's needed, alone if needed, and together when possible.
In contrast to the EU position, which is less inclined on emphasizing Iran's non-compliance of a deal aimed at thwarting its ambitions to acquire nuclear weapons, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab voiced London's concerns, which were echoed in a joint communiqué together with Paris and Berlin.
Mr. Speaker, we are very concerned about Iran's continued systemic non-compliance with its nuclear commitments. We've made that clear with our E3 partners, including recently at the ministerial meeting of JCPOA. We held on the 21st of December a ministerial meeting of the JCPOA Ministerial Commission, and that was an opportunity to set out not just the UK but with our French and German partners very clearly our position. It is welcome that President-elect Biden and the new administration has talked about coming back into the JCPOA, enhancing and strengthening it. It'll be one of the early topics of conversation that we have with the new administration.
Turning to Washington, D.C., where incoming U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stressed that if Iran would resume compliance, so would the United States under a Biden administration. Nevertheless, the newly appointed top American diplomat emphasized during his confirmation hearing that regardless of Tehran's aspirations, Washington would seek to formulate a longer and stronger agreement.
When it comes to Iran, a couple of things. First, President-elect Biden is committed to the proposition that Iran will not acquire a nuclear weapon. And we share, I know, that goal across this committee. The breakout time, the time it would take Iran to produce enough fissile material for one weapon, has gone from beyond a year, as it was under the JCPOA, to about 3 or 4 months, based at least on public reporting. And that potentially brings us right back to the crisis point that we were reaching before the deal was negotiated. And so the President-elect believes that if Iran comes back into compliance, we would too, but we would use that as a platform with our allies and partners who would once again be on the same side with us to seek a longer and stronger agreement, and also as you and the chairman have rightly pointed out, to capture these other issues, particularly with regard to missiles and Iran's destabilizing activities. That would be the objective.
At another hearing, which took place at the American Capitol, the Biden administration nominee for U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, indicated that despite the intentions and aspirations to re-engage with Iran, to the dismay of the Ayatollah regime, it may take an extensive period of time to implement a new agreement.
The President-elect has indicated that if Iran were to come back into compliance, that he would direct that we do so as well. And I think, frankly, we're a long ways from that. And, and I think there's going to be an opportunity to consult with Congress and with members like yourself on these issues as we look at that. But the President-elect has also indicated, and I agree with this, that in doing so, we have to also look at the ballistic missile issues that you've identified, and there are other, obviously, destabilizing activities that Iran engages in.
Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join myself and the team here in Jerusalem to lift up the United States once again in prayer for its salvation and peace, alongside our ongoing prayers for our persecuted brethren around the world, and in addition, of course, to our prayers for the peace of Jerusalem, the salvation of Israel, and for all those who are impacted by the corona contagion and its numerous ramifications worldwide. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Tov u'Mevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.